There is a lie every woman is told long before she can name it. A lie so old and so familiar, so normalized, we mistake it for truth. And it begins like this. Once upon a time, one day someone will choose you, and then you will live happily ever after. A beautiful story with a poisonous message beneath it. Be good, be pretty, be agreeable, be wanted, be chosen. And if you're chosen, be grateful. And if you're not chosen, something must be wrong with you. But imagine for a moment not wanting to be chosen. Imagine knowing deeply that you don't need to be completed by another, wanted by another, validated by another in order to be whole and valuable. Most women have never been given permission to imagine that. And here's the part we don't admit. We were raised to believe that our lives begin when someone else says yes to us. That is the first lie. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Marjorie, founder of the Emergent Women Collective, a space for women that are in that in-between realm, who are ready to reimagine and redefine what leadership, life, and love look like. If you're new to the channel, I want to please invite you to subscribe so that more women like you can find this work. Think about all of the fairy tales we grew up on. Snow White couldn't wake up until she was kissed by a prince. Cinderella, she had to endure abuse until the prince rescued her. Sleeping Beauty, same thing, cursed and was awakened only when a man came to her rescue. And Ariel literally gives up her voice for love. These fairy tales are not just stories, they're scripts and programming. Quiet conditioning that shaped our desires, our self-worth, our choices, and our entire identity. The fairy tale was a lie, not because love isn't real, because the version we were handed erased us. It erased our instincts, our intuition, our wildness, our voice. For generations, women have been taught to build their lives around being chosen, romantically, professionally, socially, as if someone else's recognition is the doorway to our future and happiness. But here's the truth that I had to learn the hard way. You were never meant to be chosen. You were meant to choose yourself. Now, before we go deeper, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about this honestly. Where in your life right now are you waiting to be chosen? Are you waiting for that perfect relationship? Are you waiting for that perfect job? Are you waiting on that perfect version of yourself to have success? Because until you can recognize it and name it, you can't break free from it. So in today's video, this is the beginning of a 5-part series that I'm calling When a Woman Belongs to Herself, and the launch of my Dangerous Woman portal that's going to be opening on January 2026. And this is a 6-week experience that is going to peel back the illusion of the fairy tales that we've been told, the stories we've been told. We're going to rewrite the patriarchal scripts of who we are supposed to be. And remember our sacred identity. And it is also calling in a new era of feminine leadership, one that is rooted in instinct, freedom, inner union, and embodied wholeness. So in this video, we're going to explore the first lie women were taught, how fairy tales were stripped of their original feminine wisdom, how modern women perform the bridal archetype without even knowing it, and what we must remember now before we step into 2026, the great remembering. But first, I need to be honest with you all. I lived this lie for most of my life. This isn't some concept that I just came up with. This was something that I've lived. And like so many women, the truth didn't hit me until my late 30s or 40s, early 40s. That moment where your soul starts tugging at you, where you feel something is missing. Yes, I was a mom. I was a wife. I was active in my community. But there was a part of me that was missing. And it's where you start to realize that you've been searching for that lost part of your own psyche. Some of this conditioning actually came from my own upbringing. A lot of us can connect it back to that, right? It's something my mother believed. My mother believed the fairy tales, and she taught it to me that a woman's value was tied to being chosen, a provider husband, a safe path. That was the fairy tale. My favorite story growing up was Cinderella. The prince was the savior, right? That was the blueprint that I inherited. And I followed it until I realized exactly where it had led me. And here's the truth. I didn't know I was living the bride archetype, a woman waiting to belong to someone else's story. Before the fairy tales were written down, before they were domesticated, before Disney turned them into pastel love stories, there were women telling stories to the younger women. And these stories were told by the grandmothers and the aunties and the elders and the medicine women, right? These were the keepers of the stories, and they told them orally. These storytelling traditions, they were repeated over and over again, with new details emerging with every telling. And the listeners, as they gathered, they caught different insights as they met old stories and the new ones at different phases in their lives. So the voices of these women radiated out into these circles, and they were used to teach and to break generational cycles. They weren't telling happily ever after stories. They were passing down maps, survival codes, psychic landmarks, as Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes calls them. These were the first stories, the stories meant to awaken instinct, discernment, and courage. They taught women how to sense danger, how to listen to their bodies, how to recognize predators, how to trust their inner voice, how to find their way back to themselves, how to be powerful in a world that feared powerful women. These stories weren't entertainment, they were remembrance. They were the original curriculum for feminine leadership, woven in metaphor, myth, symbolism, and body knowing. This was the first great remembering, the passing of wisdom from one woman to the next, so she would not forget who we are. But what happened? When men began writing these stories down, the wildness was edited out. The elders' warnings were removed. the intuition lessons silenced, the trials of soul initiation flattened, the fierce feminine made gentle, obedient, and passive. The heroine who once fought for her life and trusted her inner knowing was rewritten into a girl waiting quietly for rescue. The wolf became the villain instead of the teacher. The witch became the threat instead of the guide. The woman became the bride instead of the sovereign. What once taught women how to survive became stories that taught us how to behave. And that is what Dr. Estes calls the domestication, the psychic declawing of the feminine. And because of that, most of us grew up with stories that instructed us to wait, endure, suffer in silence, soften our truth. These were not the original teachings. The original fairy tales were initiations. They were invitations to awaken our instinctual nature and our wild woman energy and our capacity to be able to sense truth beyond appearances. They were the stories that told us that everything you need to know is within you. The body holds the wisdom. The feminine is the keeper. The lineage knows you carry the map within you, which is why this moment right now in your life, in our lives, feels so powerful because the feminine is remembering the stories she was never meant to forget. And in the remembering, we begin to see the lie for what it is and the truth for what it always was. So let's talk about the fairy tale actually, or how the fairy tale actually became alive. And I want to unpack that because we have to get to the root of our conditioning. We have this subconscious beliefs that are keeping us in places and relationships that are not serving our souls anymore. So understanding this helps us to release that. So the original stories, the ones told by women in women's circles around fireplaces, at kitchen tables, or even in the fields, were never meant to make women small. They were meant to make us dangerous in the way that matters. Dangerous to lies, dangerous to illusions, dangerous to anything that would separate us from ourselves. When we become dangerous, we dismantle this whole damn matrix, this system. When these stories moved from the mouths of women to the manuscripts of men, the feminine was domesticated. And the domestication happened slowly, quietly over time. Powerful female figures became passive. The wise old woman became the wicked witch. The fierce warrior girl became the lost girl. The heroine's journey became like a waiting room. The wolf, who once symbolized instinct and intuition, became a threat. The witch, who once symbolized feminine knowledge, became something to fear. And the bride, who once symbolized the inner union with the self, became a woman waiting to be rescued. This is how the lie was written into us. The story stopped being about awakening and became a story about submission. The taming of women happened through repetition. The stories are no longer a soul map. It becomes more of a behavioral guide. And the most damaging rewrite of it is the bride's archetype. Because the bride archetype isn't about marriage. It's about conditioning women to belong to someone else's story instead of their own. It's a story that if you are not someone's bride, if you're not wanted, if you're not needed, if you're not chosen, then something is wrong with you. And in this year of 2025, we actually have men who are writing policy and speaking out loud that unmarried women should not have a vote. That means you have no voice. So the bride archetype, it trains us to abandon our needs, to shrink to fit expectations, to mistake attachment for love, to choose survival over freedom, and to wait for someone else to open the door to our own lives. So in the book, Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and this is a book that a lot of my work is informed by. She calls the bluebird, this is chapter 2 of the book, the inner predator, the archetype that kills off intuition, that convinces women not to trust what they know, that punishes curiosity, that feeds off silence. Bluebird would say, "You're too much." Bluebird is saying, "Just be grateful." Bluebird, I'm sorry, not bird, bluebird, sorry. Bluebird is, don't rock the boat. Bluebird is, who do you think you are? Which happens to be the title of my memoir, Who the Hell Do You Think You Are? Bluebird is the psychological force that benefits when a woman doubts herself. This is the tale we were never taught, the one hidden beneath the princess stories and the glass slippers. And it's the tale every woman eventually meets. Because the moment you begin to sense that something's off, something's missing, the moment you feel that tug of your intuition, the moment the fairy tale stops fitting, you're standing at the same locked door threshold that every wild feminine figure has stood before. The door between the life you were conditioned to live and the life your soul is asking you to claim. That is domestication. And that is why we must return to the original feminine stories, the ones that teach us how to listen and discern and to name truth and to trust the wild self and how to survive Bluebird and how to rise as the woman who belongs to herself. So we need to talk just a little bit about the bride archetype, right? The psychological pattern almost every woman I know, including myself, has lived inside without even realizing it. Because the bride archetype, again, it's not about marriage as much as it's about belonging, or rather, being taught that we belong when someone else chooses us. It's an archetype of dependency and permission and external validation. And the part that's hard for us to understand and admit to is that You can be single, divorced, partnered, married, wildly independent, and still be living the bridal archetype. It shows up as believing someone else's approval is the key to your future. It is subtle, it is insidious, and it is everywhere. And I know it well because I lived it. I didn't know that I had built my entire sense of worth around being chosen until everything that I was holding on to began falling apart. I was saying yes to work that drained me because it looked stable. I was applying to jobs that made my soul cry because I thought it was responsible. I was shrinking my dreams because they didn't match what other people thought I should do. I was performing confidence when I was terrified of failing, pretending I was fine while everything in me screamed I was lost. I was doing what so many women do, building a life that didn't belong to me because I was afraid of what would happen if I stopped performing. That is the bride, the woman who waits, who performs, who endures, the woman who believes her value is determined by how well she fits any story other than her own. And when I finally remembered who I was and that veil of illusion dropped, I recognized that the connection I was craving was with myself. The groom I kept reaching for had changed faces over the years. First it was my father, then it was a lover, then it was a shadowy figure I couldn't name. But they were all the same thing, reflections of a masculine principle inside me that I hadn't yet integrated. And I realized that I wasn't just waiting to be chosen by other people, I was waiting to be chosen by me. I kept thinking my life would start when someone else confirmed it. And beneath that was the deeper lie, the one most women would never say out loud. We were taught to build our identities around external approval, so we never learn the power of internal authority. That's the lie beneath the lie. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So the fairy tale told us the story ends when someone chooses you, but the real story begins the moment you choose yourself. That is the initiation the bride archetype tries to prevent. That is the power patriarchy works to suppress. And that's why so many women feel like they're breaking apart right now, because we are. We are literally breaking out of the story that was never ours. You are breaking away from that identity that kept you small. You are breaking into the woman who belongs to herself. This is the threshold, ladies. This is the great remembering accelerating inside you. And this is where the new story naturally begins. When we're raised on this lie of being chosen, we don't just inherit a fantasy, we're inheriting a wound, one that shows up everywhere in our lives, often long before we can identify it. So let's talk about the cost of this lie, because every woman I know, myself included, has paid a cost. There's the emotional cost. The first thing we lose is our intuition, that deep, quiet knowing inside of us. It gets replaced with questions like, what do they think? Right? Not, what do I know? We lose confidence because we're constantly measuring our worth through someone else's eyes. We lose our voice because being good has always been safer than being true. Then there's the relational cost. This lie teaches women to overfunction, to overgive, to overextend, to carry relationships on our backs because we were taught that nurturing is our currency and losing love is the punishment for saying no. And it teaches us to accept crumbs, breadcrumbs, and calling it companionship, to stay in dynamics where our instincts whisper, leave, but the bride archetype says, try harder, be grateful, you were chosen. The leadership cost, the lie follows us into our work. We dim our light. We wait to be promoted. We seek permission for more instead of just asking for it. We play small even when we know we're capable of more. We don't apply for the opportunities we know we're qualified for. We choose safety over calling because we're still waiting for someone else to tap us on the shoulder and say, now you may begin. Then there's the body cost. And the cost is physical, believe me. It lives in our nervous systems, the anxiety, the bracing for what's next, the constant hypervigilance of trying to be enough. It lives in our exhaustion, the kind that sleep can't fix because the exhaustion is performing. It lives in the knots in our stomach and the aches that we ignore. Before I could name the archetype, I could feel it in my body. And I'm thinking maybe you can too right now. And here's what I want you to know. When a woman lives waiting to be chosen, she forgets how to choose herself. And choosing yourself is the beginning of remembering yourself. So there comes a moment when the fairy tale collapses, right? And as painful as that moment can feel, it is also the beginning of your remembering. This is the turning, the place where the performance falls away, the place where the woman that you've been, the agreeable one, the grateful one, the one who waited, begins loosening her grip. And the woman you are begins to rise. Now, the shift looks different for each of us, but it always follows the same energetic truth. The shift from being chosen to choosing yourself is not from defiance, but from a deep embodied clarity. Okay? So this isn't something that you just conjure up in your mind. This requires you to go within and embody from a place of knowing. The shift from performing to being, no more shrinking, no more pretending, no more bending yourself into shapes that portray your spirit. The shift from waiting to leading, leading your life, leading your decisions, leading your own process of becoming. This is the moment a woman stops hoping the story will save her and starts authoring the story herself. The turning is the moment you remember my life begins when I say it does. And everything starts to change. Watch my video. When a woman remembers who she is, everything shifts. There is a reason so many women are waking up at this time. A reason why our intuition feels louder, our tolerance for self-betrayal is lower, and our desire for something real, something that's ours, feels undeniable. This is why you see me right now on your screen. I cannot turn away from it. And this is what I have been talking about for months now. We are in a feminine awakening, a global remembering. And as we move towards 2026, the year of the great remembering, women everywhere are reclaiming truth. Truths that we were taught to forget. Women are remembering that I'm not here to be chosen. I'm here to choose. I'm not the bride. I'm the builder. My life is not a romance arc, is a sovereignty arc. My leadership is not conditional, it's instinctual. I don't need permission, I need presence. Presence with myself, presence with my truth, presence with the woman I'm becoming. This is the pulse beneath everything that I teach. The world needs women who choose themselves because only women who choose themselves can lead in the times that we are entering. So let's talk about how we move from remembering to embodiment. And here are the steps that I guide women through in my work. So you first want to name the lie that you've internalized. Where have you been waiting to be chosen? A job, a relationship, right? Naming it breaks the spell, right? You want to listen to for your inner bluebeard. What voice inside you tries to silence your instinct? Is that voice saying, that don't make others feel uncomfortable with your own choices? Is it telling you not to ask for more? Is it telling you you can't trust yourself? You need to identify it so it can no longer run your life. Reclaim the key. So in the Bluebeard tale, the key is the woman's intuition, the thing that she was told not to touch. So ask yourself, what truth have I been avoiding, right? What have I been afraid to open with my key? Then choose yourself daily, daily. One small act of sovereignty every day. Say no, say yes, one boundary, take one sacred pause, listen to your body before you listen to anyone else. And then return to your wild knowing. Your body is the map. Feel into it. Get to know your body in every way. Your intuition is the compass. Your rhythm is the guide. The more you return to them, the more your life realigns. These steps sound simple, but they will dismantle the bride archetype in real time. So I want to leave you with this. We were raised to seek out the wedding, the white dress, the ceremony, the Prince Charming. But what we needed was the union with our own souls first. Know this, I'm not speaking against marriage. I'm not anti-marriage or men even. That's not it. This is about us being our own first loves. Because we're not living inside the fairy tale anymore. We're not waiting to be rescued or looking for approval or permission. We are writing a new myth, the myth of the remembered woman. A woman who chooses herself, a woman who leads from instinct, a woman who carries her own key, a woman who refuses to shrink her sovereignty to fit someone else's story. This is the new narrative. This is the work. This is the great remembering, and it's already begun. So, if this message spoke to you, I want to invite you to go deeper with this work. So there's a couple of things you can do real quickly. You can join the Emergent Women Collective on School for free community to be supported through your threshold moment. And or you can join the Emergent Saloon, only $19 a month for a more intimate support and guidance to work with me. And we actually work through the book Women Who Run with the Wolves. The next thing, watch my video that I did just last week, When a Woman Remembers Who She Is, to understand how to move from remembering to embodiment. And then please subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this series, When a Woman Belongs to Herself, as this leads up to the opening of this never done before. I'm so proud of this, the Dangerous Woman portal opening in January. So until next time, I'm Marjorie, and this is the work of remembering who you were before the world told you who to be.